Brian, how's it going?
I'm doing well, Patrick. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Just
Good.
been busy.
Good.
So I'm here with Brian today. Brian is an insurance specialist or insurance broker with Goosehead. Brian, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, thank you so much, Patrick. Yeah, a little bit about me. I work with a company called Goosehead Insurance. We can both make fun of the name together. I'm not the CEO. But what we do here is we are the largest brokerage in kind of the Carolinas, and more so like the East Coast, if you will. So Progressive, Allstate, Nationwide, Travelers, all the big names that have like the goofy commercials, all of that, where basically I get to shop all of those around. I'm a basically agent for all of them. And so where I kind of come in is depending on what the prices are with those companies, whatever one's the lowest rate or comes in with the best coverage for you, we can get you all set up and squared away. And the best part about that is since we are such a large brokerage, depending on roof age or how old the house is, or if it's on the coast, if it's on the land, it's landlocked, anything really, we have great product for, which is really, really nice. So at the end of the day, we can always kind of get someone squared away, set up, and make insurance easy and fun.
Awesome, awesome. And that's why I wanted to kind of set this up with you. I wanted to talk about some of the trends we're kind of seeing
Yeah.
in the insurance market right now. Because I'm on the lending side and I deal with a lot of real estate investors, first time home buyers, a lot of refis now the rates are slowly trending in the right direction. But I've been noticing insurance, specifically in the southeast and on the coast, but just in general, insurance has been getting kind of crazy. So I wanted to carve some time out today to pick your brain about that and to see
Yeah.
what you're seeing on the insurance side. What I've noticed in the past few weeks or months really is that we're seeing homeowners insurance in certain areas skyrocket compared to where it was a few years ago. Everyone thinks of homeowners insurance as being super, super cheap, and it still relatively is, right? But we all know that those things are changing. A lot of that has to do with inflation and the storms and hurricanes and wildfires. So I wanted to see what your insight was on that, kind of what trends you're seeing specifically in the Carolinas and in North Carolina, South Carolina, and kind of what different regions there are and that kind of stuff. So tell me a little bit about what you're seeing right now.
Yeah, great question. You're exactly right. Insurance is increasing exponentially. It's over the past year, I would say. Kind of the same way with rates. Insurance is kind of the home buying experience. They kind of go hand in hand in that way. Where right now, tough market is kind of like the overall general scope. Long story short, if you want to date it back all the way to COVID-ish, insurance carriers gave really, really cheap rates, trying to kind of give back and make sure that people were laid off jobs and times got tough, and they wanted to make sure that people still had insurance.
Hmm.
However, 4 years past that now, where people still get into accidents, wildfire still happens, hurricane still happens, accidents happen. They're called accidents for a reason, where the insurance carriers then became unprofitable, meaning your insurance premium, you would pay $100, but, they would pay you thousands of dollars to make that accident go away or fix it. And so it really just became unprofitable. And that's where, unfortunately, this is still a business in the aspect where insurance premiums are now increasing to kind of mitigate that loss and kind of mitigate any losses that happened previously. And so insurance rates are increasing, and it's just kind of one of those things that we're seeing, unfortunately, take place. More specifically, you're kind of exactly right, where like coastal areas, more like wind and hail mitigation, areas along those like areas are definitely seeing it a little bit harder. Carriers are now just being a little bit more picky in general. So this is where roof age or house age or what you're exactly doing with this property gets a little bit more tight and a little bit restrictive, just because the carriers are not going to want to take someone that, oh, you're going to be in this house for 1 2 weeks 2 months out of the year. A lot can happen and you're not being there, you're not maintaining it, and it just is a little bit more restrictive. Or if they're not restrictive, they're going to be a little bit more expensive. So it's kind of that catch 2022.
Yeah, I got you. So, and we'll circle back to the roof in a minute because that's something a trend I've noticed as well. But
Mhm.
so if I'm understanding you correctly, we kind of had this shock effect where insurance premiums were almost in a way artificially low during the COVID era, and now they shot up to higher than what they previously were prior to COVID. And what people are seeing is not just the increase, but that huge chasm between where they went from really low to really high. really quickly. And that does
Exactly.
make a lot of sense. I've noticed the same thing in my own homeowners policy, as
Hmm.
well as I know a lot of my clients. I see that some of the policies are all over the map, and to be frank, they're a lot more expensive than I thought. I've actually changed the way that I underwrite or pre-underwrite files to account for higher insurance premium, just because insurance is a necessity. You have to outsource that risk. But at the same time, if it comes into a
Hmm.
DTI issue or whatever, I want to be prepared for that. So to circle back to the roof piece, I know
Hmm.
you mentioned the age of the roof and stuff like that. Something I've noticed as well is that a lot of the carriers are being picky, not just about the age of the roof, but they're actually inspecting it and checking the condition of it and things of that nature. Are you seeing that?
Yes, great question. Actually, a lot of carriers have started to develop like their own kind of insurance agents that will go out and inspect, or they'll hire a third party. And this is kind of again going to being restrictive. Um, for me or a client, you can go online, you can say, "Hey, it's this old," but they're gonna actually ask for proof, or they're gonna actually send someone out there to double check and verify that this house isn't half standing, if you will, or there's any lies on that policy or anything along those lines. And honestly, in a way, sometimes it kind of gives the carrier a way to maybe get out of this situation where, oh, hey, it looks like this one shingle is hanging off the roof. We won't take this anymore. Where realistically, they just don't want to take that located risk or that property. Just because if you think about it in the insurance mind, when they sign you up or you sign up and taking you on as a client, you are technically a risk to them. They now insure that property. So
Mhm.
God forbid if a tornado, hurricane, rainstorm, anything did happen to that house, that company is now liable for that, and they would have to pay out. So they're just trying to keep their win loss ratio, I guess is the best way to put it, at a standard that that company can withhold it.
Gotcha. Because I have seen, to your point, insurance carriers, nitpick, for lack of a better word, the roof condition, the home condition, whatever. So what you're saying is that when they're getting really, really nitpicky, a lot of times they're just looking for a reason to justify not insuring that particular property, and you're better off just finding a new carrier.
Not all the times, but it definitely feels like there's some inspectors that come out there with maybe a little bit of a vengeance or maybe a little bit of assignment, if you will.
Yeah,
And that's where it can just get tough. Again, like you're just trying to find a very cheap or and an affordable and good coverage home, and it can definitely get tough, especially like when you're trying to, like you said, fit into some DTI situations, and you have really tight numbers or margins, and you want to make this property work. Insurance might not always be thought of as kind of an easy way to fix that, or to lower monthly payments. But
mhm.
there's definitely ways if you get in contact with the right people that can make sure that you're paying the right price and you actually have an insurance carrier that will help you out for the long term.
Yeah, I got you. So let's say I'm a home buyer looking to buy a home, or I'm a realtor helping home buyer clients, or I'm a real estate investor looking for, my next property, whether it's a buy and hold, flip, whatever. What are some things in terms of the property or the collateral, the property itself, that I need to be looking for, questions I need to be asking, whether it's the roof, the foundation, whatever, as it relates to insurance and understanding what those premiums are likely to be or how difficult coverage is going to be? What are some questions or some statistics or data I need to be looking for?
Yeah, great question. So if I was an investor walking into a property, and let's just say it's during an inspection, or I'm buying this property to flip it or rent it out, right? First and foremost is just going to be like, what's new, what's updated, what's addition, the HVAC system, the roof, the any additions, square footage wise, just basically overall get a main scope of the house and the overall structure, right? How is it structurally built? And then you can kind of get nitpicky with there, but that's going to be more dependent on the investor and more dependent on like what you want to do with this property. If you, for example, if you're renting it out to students, where I went to college, there was a lot of off-campus housing, but
Hmm.
where student tenants, aren't really looked as favored. We all had our time in college versus maybe someone
Yeah.
that is 50 or 60 or has a family, right? Where that's going to be completely different depending on if it's a duplex, one person, two-person, all of that, where basically what you're doing with it. Are they long term? Are they short term? Is it Airbnb? Basically, assessing your situation, it's going to be tailored so much to like the carrier, if you will, right? Some carriers like certain things, and other carriers like other advantages or ways houses are rented or invested in. But definitely the roof age is going to be a main point. The overall house age is another one. Is it 100 years old? Is it brand new? Is it 50 years old? When was it built? And then
Hmm.
also as well is previous history. So we do something that's called like a clue report, which basically for realtors, I think most realtors will understand is previous claims on the property. Was in 2007, it looks like that there was a flood in the basement. In 2015, it looks like that there was roof damage to hailstorm. And kind of having like a history report on that property. And that's where, oh, it looks like something did happen in 2015 to the roof. Was it updated after that? Oh, no, it's not. That's kind of a problem, and making sure that your house is either rebuilt or restructured or anything along those lines.
Gotcha. Okay. So the property history itself, the claims history related to that particular property comes into play. Is
Mhm.
that something that is publicly available? Like if I'm a home buyer, an investor looking at a property, is that a copy of a report that you, the broker, can get for me on that property, or the realtor
Easy.
can get, or how does that work?
Yeah, very, very easy. So all it would be is basically it would be clients like name information just so we can run it with a person. And then it would just be the property address is really the only thing that we would need. It takes 2 minutes. A lot of carriers will actually run their own reports for you. And so when you're quoting out, I can send you like a clue report or anyone a clue report that needs to be.
Gotcha. Okay. That's very interesting. So kind of going a little bit deeper in that process again, let's say I'm the home buyer, or for
Mhm.
whatever, whether it's a primary or investment, whatever the case may be, and I get this report from you, and it brings up that there was hail damage to the roof or some kind of
Mhm.
damage to the roof or a claim in 2015, 16, 18, somewhere in there.
Mhm.
What is there something that should be done during the negotiation phase or the due diligence phase of the contract where that buyer's under contract to either lower the premium or verify, like for instance, are we looking to verify that that claim that the repairs were actually completed, or does that make a difference?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So having it be completed or updated is very, very big. So if there was ever a situation where I'm an investor and you're an investor, we're buying in on a piece of property and there was something that happened to, again, we'll just bring up roof because it's easy.
Hmm.
Something did happen. I would want to know before I make any purchases on this property if that was completed or updated. On the insurance side, carriers will not rewrite or add you on or take you on as a client if there's already an existing damage. Kind of going back to that win loss ratio, if
Hmm.
they were to sign you up and there was previous damage that has not been fixed, why would that insurance carrier take you? You know what I mean? Because they're already signing themselves up for a loss. Just because you would insure that first rain that happens,
First time the wind
yeah,
blows, you're filing a claim.
bingo. Yep, you're calling a claim. And so that's where they just wouldn't want to take that. So for me, having a clue report, looking at that past history and understanding what would be completed or what needs to be done if it already hasn't been is a very, very big thing. And keeping that documentation, talking to past realtors or talking to past like home owners, all of that, basically making sure that everything's done. If they have that, if you can have that, that would be amazing.
So is that something that, again, let's say I'm buying a house, does the current property owner need to provide like an invoice or a receipt the work was completed, or it's just a verbal statement where they're saying, yeah, I had the roof replaced after I made that claim? Is that enough?
So that's a great question. It depends on the certain carriers. Again, we work with so many. Some are okay with just a verbal written agreement,
Hmm.
where you just like sign something like, yes, this has been updated. I've heard that. Or some actually do include a invoice or a construction like invoice. You can reach out to whoever did it or the past home buyer and say, hey, when was this rebuilt?
And I'm guessing, I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess that's part of your process where, like, let's say you get a request for a quote on a particular property, and the clue report says that there was a claim in 2016 on the roof, and you're not able to tell whether that claim was resolved or not. Is that something you're letting the client know that, hey, listen, there's a potential that there could be more expensive, or are you quoting the most expensive one and then saying if you provide proof that the roof was replaced and the quote may come down? How does that side of the
Yeah.
equation work?
Yeah, great question. So what we can do is kind of hopefully two options. We can have one where someone will take it with a written agreement or maybe like exclusion or liability loss saying, hey, this did happen. I am aware of it and I'm going to pay for it on my own dollar or I'm going to, sign up and take the additional premium. Or, there's something that we can submit to underwriting, and saying, hey, we're submitting documentation and we're submitting this and that will open up, if you will, saying like, hey, that carrier wasn't going to take it previously. With this documentation, are you going to take it? And then most times than not, they're going to say, hey, thank you for sending that over. We will take this property because we do see proof. And then that's where you'll get that great price, because technically that shows it's either been updated very recently, or, there's been an update or an addition because you fixed it, right? So that's where they'll take it at usually a better price. So sometimes, in a way, I know this is going to sound so weird, when there was a previous damage and you have proof of updating, you have proof of a fix, sometimes it could work in your favor as a new buyer, because it shows, hey, in 2021, this is a brand new roof because this happened. And then that's kind of where they're like, okay, you've upgraded your roof. If something did happen again like that, it's at its strongest, it's young, it's new, it's a new roof.
Mhm.
It's at its strongest, which is kind of a weird kind of dichotomy, if you will.
Yeah. Is there like a magic, bingo number for roof age where once you're past this number, then it's bad versus before that number, it's good? Or is it vary heavily by carrier?
It depends on carrier. I will say personally, the magic number is 20, a 20-year-old roof. After 20 years old, 21, 22, 25, it gets a little bit harder to insure.
Hmm.
Anything below 10, you're going to be in golden. Anywhere from 10 to 20, it's going to be okay. You're going to find your carriers. They're going to be a normal standard price. Over 20, I'm going to have a conversation with the client saying, hey, this is why, this is maybe why, talk through maybe different discount options. Can we bundle the home and auto? Are you renting it out long term? Great. Like, is this your first investment property? Is this your 12th investment property? Kind of like look at different options and discount ways that we can kind of help out with the client.
Yeah. And then I would assume that that same setup probably varies if you're 3 miles from the coast in Charleston versus you're a couple hundred miles inland in Columbia or Charlotte, that, that age of the roof might not, like, in other words, a 20-year roof might be fine in Columbia, but a 20-year roof might not fly 5 miles from the coast in Charleston or something like that.
Exactly. Exactly. And I know that it could just be, you're exactly right. And then basically, if you go to the extremes, right? Let's just say a house on the peninsula of Florida versus a house in Indiana, right?
Mhm.
They're just going to be completely different weather types. There's completely different losses. Florida, that property is going to be a lot more susceptible to hurricanes, tornadoes, hailstorms, windstorms, right? Because of the weather, right? And so it's just, you're exactly right. Depending on so many different things, it's hard to just say ballpark, this is what this price is going to be. It's dependent on so many different things.
Yeah, yeah, I got you. So digging a little bit deeper into that, let's say I'm an investor and I'm buying a property that is distressed. I know it needs some work. I'm gonna, basically bring it back to life. I'm gonna renovate it, bring it back to life, and I plan to hold this in my portfolio, right? I plan to
Mhm.
make this into some kind of a rental, whether it's long term, short term, medium term, whatever. It's going to be some kind of rental property I foresee owning for the next several years, and I've
Mhm.
got the opportunity to do the renovations. How I have control over that, right? Or is there anything I can do in the renovation process to lower premiums going forward? As far as documentation, using certain materials, using certain construction methods, taking pictures or video, like what can I do?
Great question. I think the biggest thing that not a lot of people would think of is using an accredited builder, or having one where that shows proof of, hey, this builder or this person built the whole neighborhood or built, X, Y, and Z. That just kind of shows credibility from the carrier standpoint, rather
Mhm.
than just Billy Joe down the street that, redid my roof for me for 20 bucks and some beer, right? It's just, maybe sometimes they look at that a little bit better. In terms of renovation, though, any documentation, any pictures, any updates that you can have or show, or keep in your back pocket for proof, is always better than none, for sure. But in terms of like starting one over the other, any update as an insurance, we're gonna like it for sure. Any
Gotcha.
update's better than nothing.
So let's say I'm renovating the kitchen, right? And I've got the cabinets out and they're being replaced. The walls are already cut open. And the plumbing, I'm on the fence about replacing the plumbing. Let's
Mhm.
just say it's the original plumbing from the house. I've got the opportunity to replace it right now. I'm kind of split about whether it needs it or not. It's not a bad idea. And I decided, you know what, I want to bulletproof this thing for the future. I don't want any leaks inside the wall. I'm going to go ahead and replace the plumbing with new plumbing. My question there, as an example, is there any particular type of plumbing material like PEX versus copper or anything like that? And then two, um, is that going to translate into some kind of premium discount in most cases? I know like it's dynamic, but is that generally going to lead to some kind of premium discount, or is that just thanks for doing that, but doesn't really change the calculus any?
Yeah, great question. So I really like the plumbing one. So it depends again on the materials. I would say going back to the roof, I guess roof is very, very important.
Hmm.
Is more like shingle roofs versus metal roofs. And more along those lines. Some materials are a little bit better. I would definitely say shingles or composite. Three tab is a little bit more common than a metal, just because metal breaks, it's a lot harder to
To
redo the whole
replace,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess that also goes into the replacement cost of the house, right? So in terms of insurance, you might be talking to your realtor, or when you're buying a property, you're looking at the market value. In terms of insurance, we're worried about rebuilding that structure for you to rent it back out or to live in it again. And so we're worried about the shingles, the glass, the front door, the doorknob, the windows, everything that makes the house the house.
Hmm.
And so if you update it with a premium product, premium, plumbing, appliances, kitchen, that's just going to make the replacement cost of that house go up a little bit more. And so that's where that overall dwelling. However, since it is newer materials, if you ever did update anything that's very serious, HVAC, plumbing, you did a whole restoration toward a room, roof, anything along those lines, siding, I would definitely contact your insurance agent and just say, hey, this has been updated. There definitely is like discounts and favored better, again, just because it's younger or newer and stronger, that you would probably see some money off your insurance premium fall down for sure.
Awesome. And then for documentation on that, do you need like permits for the construction? Do you need invoices? Are pictures enough with a verbal statement? How does that work?
Yeah, so pictures will suffice. The easiest and most clear way, I would say, if there's any invoice, a detailed invoice of what the contractor, what you did, that
Mhm.
shows like upgraded in this and upgraded on that. Showing a paid invoice is always, always, always accepted. Pictures, not so much, or sometimes there may be a pain in the pain in the hassle in the aspect of you have to go up, take a picture on your roof, and then you have to go down, and then they tell you in 2 days or a day later, hey, we actually need the other side as well, and you got to take the ladder back out of the garage here.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I
And so,
got you.
and something along those lines. But invoice is always, always taken, and I would
Yeah.
always keep that for your own personal records as well.
And then, like, let's say that same investor is flipping the house instead of holding it. Do those benefits pass on to the buyers? Like, let's say you're buying a recently renovated house and they're able to document new plumbing, new HVAC, that kind of stuff. Do those benefits pass on to that buyer, or is
Oh,
that
for
just
sure. For
okay?
sure, yeah, because when you're buying that property, you're now buying the new upgraded version of that house.
Hmm.
And so that would be, a huge value add if I was an investor or fix and flip. Hey, we invest this money to make your home insurance and your home purchase a little bit cheaper for you because that would be a great value add if I was an investor for sure.
Absolutely. And then let's say I'm still the investor in the process. In terms of your insurance process and working with your clients, is that something that I can call you on and get advice? So, hey, listen, I'm halfway through this renovation. I'm on the fence about replacing the floors. It's got laminate floors right now. I'm thinking about putting LVP new floors in it. Is
Yeah.
that going to move the needle? Well, can you advise and guide on that, or is that more of a like, let's see what happens afterwards?
No, 100% I can advise on that. And that's something where, if you already have a current insurance policy, you can call into your carrier and see like, hey, if we make this update on it, before renewal, what is that renewal price going to change? You can see the price changes in real time. So I'd be more than happy if someone called me and saying, hey, would this help or would this wouldn't help, give some advice, maybe give a free quote in the aspect of, hey, it's this with the hardwood floors. If we switched it to carpet, it looks like it's coming in at this price, and seeing what those contracts and quotes would be, and kind of give the person a better ballpark. Because that way as well, if you're a home buyer, and you're like, hey, I'm debating about paying for a new roof, it's coming in at $1,000 and or $7,000. That new roof, if it's going to save you $1,000 a year on insurance, you just paid off a new roof in 7 years. If you kind of
Yep,
look at it that way. And so that's
I
always
got
like
you.
very
Very good.
interesting along those ways. So if you're a home buyer or investor, that's something to definitely look at and see long term if it's going to be even profitable for you.
Hmm. Or let's say you're negotiating with the seller and you're trying to figure out, if concessions even needed or if there needs to be an adjustment to the price because of the roof age or
Exactly.
whatever the case may be. Um, That's awesome information because I'd always heard stuff along those lines like, oh, well, if you replace the windows with X type of windows, then it'll lower your insurance or
Mhm.
whatever. And I've never, I'm not an insurance expert, so it's kind of one of those like urban myths or whatever. So
Yeah.
that's good to know. It's good information. If you were a home buyer today and you were or an investor even and you were looking for a property, what are some things that would be either red flags or would at least raise some questions for you if you were inspecting a property from an insurance
Ooh,
perspective?
great question. Great question. First, I think would be looking at that clue report, looking at that past history of that property. There was one actually, for example, here in North Carolina, was running a quote for someone. They were thinking about buying this property, and it looked like they were right by a river. The backyard came up to a river, and the
Hmm.
backyard actually flooded. Like once every, I think it was like once every 7 years, the backyard flooded, and they were looking at this as a long-term family home. And it was just one of the things where I had to set the expectations of, hey, listen, off of the last, it was like 21 years, there's been three, and it's kind of averaging once every 7 years. If this is something that you're okay with and that you can accept, or if you want to invest into building a higher ramp or something along those lines, that's something that I would definitely advise. So looking at that clue report, seeing what that past history, weather or history on like the breakdowns, something along
Yeah.
those lines. And then as well, kind of just like again, the overall structure of the property. Is it hanging off of two legs? Is it structurally sound? Has it been updated? Has it been kept? Has this property had continuous insurance past years? Same with auto insurance. If your auto insurance lapse, trying to regain, there's always a little bit of a added extra premium on that because
Mhm.
for a week or a month or a year, you were without insurance. So if anything happened to that property, it would not be carried by the carrier, and it looks bad on you in that aspect.
Gotcha, it's the unknown piece of it. And I have heard that if insurance policies on a home lapses, then when you reinstate the policy or get a new policy, it can be significantly more expensive, specifically because of the lapse.
And then
So,
that's also too where if policy ever lapsed or a policy increases at a huge, huge, huge amount, and this is more of just maybe a like lender focus, is insurance is included on the monthly escrow,
mhm.
and if they see that increase right away, for me at least, insurance wouldn't be the first thing that would on my mind. I would call Patrick and be like, why did you increase this or what happened? Where
Yeah,
really
yeah,
it was nothing to do with you or anything to do with the loan or the mortgage. It had to do with the insurance. And so that's where, if you can if you're a loan officer, you can find someone in your network that can help out with the insurance and make the overall portfolio of that buyer investor and cash flow it as easy as possible. That's kind of like where insurance can kind of really help out, new home
yeah,
buyers or clients.
yeah, absolutely. That's something that I've seen some deals that are make or break based on insurance because the insurance premiums have been
Mhm.
getting expensive again. I used to, as a general rule of thumb, I used to quote or estimate, I should say, around 0.5% of the property's value as just a ballpark premium for DTI purposes and monthly
Mhm.
payment purposes. And especially in coastal areas like Charleston or even Louisiana, because Louisiana's having the same problems.
Exactly.
Um, I'm closer to using like 0.8% as just an estimate figure for, okay, it's a 400K property. They're looking at buying. Let's get a ballpark. Obviously the P&I payment, the principal interest payment is fixed on that. But to your point, the escrows, the taxes, the insurance, that kind of stuff. Some of it I have to guesstimate to get a ballpark figure. So I'll say, okay, well, given what I've seen recently in this area, I'm going to estimate at 0.8%. Hopefully it comes down, but it's been high recently.
Mhm.
So it's definitely impacted the way that I do business as well. And I think to your point, having the ability as a home buyer or as a real estate investor buying a property, having that quality insurance specialist in your back pocket that you can pick up the phone and say, hey, can you pull a quick clue report on this? Can you give me some insight into where, ballpark quotes, whatever the case is going to be, so they know
Mhm.
what they're dealing with or know how to negotiate, or if there is, like, let's say they're buying a property for a really great price, it's a sweet deal, but insurance premiums are coming in high. Understand that, yeah, they're high because the roof is old, but I plan on replacing the roof in the rehab anyways. That's going to come back down pretty quickly.
Mhm.
So Yeah, that's some powerful information.
And then there's also another topic to go off of that is there's also like special things like builder's risk policies or wind and hail policies where if you are just not even going to live in the house, you're just going to update it and fix it and then flip it. You don't even need to have a landlord policy or a homeowner's policy. You can just get a builder's risk policy
Mhm.
that's going to be way cheaper. And it's just saying, hey, I'm just insuring this property if halfway through the kitchen repair, I destroy the whole thing and I knock down a wall I wasn't supposed to, and that way it's kind of a win-win because you get to pay cheap insurance. It still covers the house, still has continuous coverage on that property. And then when you can sell it, the buyer, it's already upgraded, it's already brand new and it's going to be a cheaper homeowner's insurance when you do sell that and flip it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually something. I'm glad you brought that up, 'cause that's a question I get asked a lot is, investors will be buying a property with the intention of rehabbing it and stuff like that, and won't let their insurance partner know about that. And
Mhm.
correct me if I'm wrong, if you buy a property and you have a homeowner's policy for it, but you are an investor and you're renovating this thing for 6 months and it's unoccupied, there's no tenants, there's nobody living in it, and walls are gutted and plumbing's being replaced, and something happens, there may be some issues with having that homeowner's policy cover it if it's not
Oh,
ready.
for sure.
Correct.
For sure. And that's where, unfortunately, again, with this current market that we're in, you're seeing these insurance carriers try to find ways out and try to find loopholes to where they don't have to pay $100,000 for a new roof. Where that's so important on the documentation. It says, hey, you're supposed to be living here. This is a homeowner's policy. And you sell, and you haven't been here, or you rent it out to someone, and that tenant made the mistake, or that tenant, you're not covering the tenant. Your name's on the policy. The tenant has nothing to
Mhm.
do with it. So legally, they have the right to say, hey, this is a homeowner's policy that you've been renting out. And so that's why there's different builders risk, there's landlord policies, there's vacancy policies. If you're going to buy a property, I had a vacancy policy where an investor, big time investor, bought a property, was going to be out of the country for a month and wasn't going to do anything right away. We wrote him a very cheap, just vacancy policy. Hey, we're going to do something to it, just not right now. Super, super cheap. It made him keep it covered. So then, while he was away, he doesn't have to worry about any storms that happens in the backyard. If there was any violence or vandalism, that's all covered under that vacancy policy, which is super nice. And then that way,
Mhm.
when he came back, he made that fix and flip. He can then change that to a new person or change that to a home buyer or change that to any kind of policy that he needs it to be.
Yeah, that's solid because again, I get asked that a lot. And a lot of people, I mean, when I started, I didn't know this stuff. The only reason I know it now is because I work in the lending field, and I've
Mhm.
seen enough of it, and I've flipped a few properties as well. Where fortunately, in the past, I had a pretty savvy insurance partner ask me like, "Well, what are you doing with this? Are you going to be moving in right away?" And I was like, "Oh no, I've got 3 or 4 months worth of work to do this thing before I move in." It's like, okay, let's update your policy because I don't want something to happen and you're not covered. And I had
Exactly
no
correct.
idea. I was, at that point, it was a primary home, but it was also a live-in flip for us. We
Yeah.
knew that we were going to be selling it down the road at
Mhm.
some point, so we weren't in a hurry with it. I had no idea. That was my first time dealing with that aspect of insurance because that's just not something you would typically know.
And I think a lot of people and a lot of investors get caught up in no fault of their own. I would do the same. I mean, insurance is not the coolest or sexiest thing, but it's something where a lot of people can definitely get caught up in talking about the rates, talking about the mortgage, talking about this, when there's a lot of extra added benefits or costs to a property and owning a property that, not a lot of people think of. And it's just something where if you can have a network, a realtor, a lender, an insurance agent, a home inspector, a home warranty, anything along those lines, that if you ever have any questions and specialties that you can reach out to and help out, that's like the biggest thing I could advise for sure.
Absolutely. I field questions like that all day long. People calling and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about buying this property. What are your thoughts?" I say, here are the three things that are good about this. And here are the two, three, four things you need to watch out for because this could make your rate go up. This could make your loan eligible.
Exactly.
This could whatever happens. So to your point, having that insurance specialist, an insurance partner, which you're technically a broker, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yep.
So having that broker that can work on your behalf, but also be that trusted source where you can pick up the phone, shoot them a text, shoot them an email, and say, "Hey, I had this going on. What do I need to do now to make sure I'm prepared for the future? What do I need to watch out for? Or is there anything we can do to lower the premium, save me money, that kind of thing." So the communication and that trusted, having that trusted, reliable partner is huge. So,
Yeah.
parting thoughts, last minute, because you mentioned storms. Um, for those of us, and I grew up in South Louisiana dealing with hurricanes, live in Charleston with hurricanes now, so nothing new to me. But a lot of people who live in the southeast now have moved from maybe other areas of the country where hurricanes and major named storms aren't a thing. Um, Walk us through the impacts of having a named storm coming our direction. If you're, let's say you're a home buyer, you're shopping for a home, you're going to put a house under contract this week, but like right now we have down in the Caribbean a storm that's forming and is likely to become a named storm and stuff like that. What are the
Exactly.
insurance ramifications for that?
Great question. So basically, this actually happened not too long ago when there was the South Carolina, the hurricane that was kind of coming up the coast, where
Mhm.
basically insurance carriers, again, going back to that win-loss ratio, won't actually sign anyone new if they see that it's going to be coming within the next week, week and a half. And that's unfortunately sometimes where you're trying to close on a house, you try to get a mortgage on a property, and you can't get the insurance to go through with it, right? And so same thing with like flood insurance is a great example of this, where flood insurance will take 30 days before sometimes you actually close on a house. Unless you're, excuse me, let me take that back. If you're just buying a normal flood insurance policy, there sometimes is a 30-day wait period. And the reason, same thing with like a house, is they don't want you to just buy a property, buy flood insurance for this storm, have it come, have it destroyed, and then you file a claim, and then you cancel them after that's done. Just because, oh, hurricane season's done, or anything along
Mhm.
those lines, windstorm season's done, we're all set. And so having proper wind and hail deductibles on there, to where if anything did happen on your homeowner's policy or anything along those lines, you're not paying an arm and a leg out of it. You have coverage for that, and anything along those lines for sure.
Yeah, that same thing. I'm working with that right now. We have a storm coming our way, and it may impact some of my clients who are trying to buy properties right now because they may have a contract with a closing date that they can't close because they can't secure insurance for the
Mhm.
property until the hurricane is either passed or has been, the situation's resolved, kind of thing. Because to
Yeah.
your point, carriers won't issue new policies, or does it affect when the policy goes into effect or when the binder is issued, or how exactly on the technical side of things, how does that work?
Yeah, so on the technicality, right when you, so it's on the effective date. So right when you bind it, whenever that effective date starts. So let's just say I'm buying a property. I'm going to buy it, 2 weeks from now. I could
Hmm.
talk to my insurance agent, call them, get the policy set up, get the policy sent to the mortgage, getting everything squared away. But that policy won't work until the listed date that is on there. So like
Hmm.
1201 on October 1st, 2024 is when that policy is going to start. And I'm moving in October 1st. That's when you'll have coverage on that property for sure. And so that's where it depends on how fast you want to move in, when the closing date is, when you're going to grab the keys. That's for me as an insurance agent to just kind of learn more about that and when we should have that policy started.
Gotcha. So going back to the hurricane situation, is it that you can bind, but the effective date will not start until the hurricane is passed, or you can't even bind your policy until the hurricane is passed?
Can't even bind it, so they won't even accept that, or take payment on that policy at all, which is unfortunate news as an insurance agent having to call someone and saying, hey, I understand that you want to invest in this property, you want to buy this. As of right now, we can't get any insurance on it. And so it's just unfortunate. I think I would just have to draw it up to just terrible timing at points like
Mhm.
that, where
Yeah.
it just happens. Hurricanes happen, storms happen. It just looks like that this date is falling on a bad time. Some insurance carriers will take it. Again, as being such a large broker, some might have options. Some might do like liability or exclusion, where it's called like named storm perils, where
Hmm.
if the storm happens that has a name, we will take that property as a whole. But if that hurricane has Hurricane Katrina, I know you said like Louisiana,
Hmm.
any name like storm that has a name, we just won't cover that. So you can get insurance, you can get a policy, you could get that mortgage like through, but you just wouldn't be able to be covered fully if a name stormed or something along those lines happened. So you can like move forward with that process.
And one last question for you, and that let's say you're already under contract, your policy has already been bound, I guess would be the technical term.
Hmm.
And let's say you're supposed to close on October 1st, but the storm is going to hit on the 1st, the 2nd, the 30th, the day before, stuff like that. But the binder's already in place. Does that
Great
change
question.
anything?
No, great question. So whatever is signed, sealed, and delivered is done. So they can't come back, which is kind of a strength on the consumer side. Once that they accept you or that this policy is bound and completed, they can't take that away. It is a signed legal document. And then what's also nice as a consumer power is you can cancel that if you're leaving or you're moving or anything along those lines. You, as the consumer, have the power to kind of take and choose when you want it. However, on the insurance side, once that is completed, once you've made payment for that policy or once you've sent it to the mortgage, they've acknowledged that we will take this property. So that's best timing or best case scenario is like, let's just say you bind a policy and then the next day there's a carrier moratorium and they won't take anyone new. Too late, already been there. You already said I gotcha. You already said you take me. So that's one of the best things for you. Yeah, for sure. Great question.
That's awesome because I might be, depending on where this hurricane goes, I might see some of that here shortly. So
And
we'll
then
see what happens.
as a realtor or as a insurance agent, maybe a little piece of advice is maybe put the policy through, get them to say they would agree, and then you can always just change the effective date later. You can push it back. They've already accepted it, so that's not the problem anymore. It's the start date. So there's been times when a client's like, "Hey, even for closing, closing got pushed back, or this happened, I couldn't make it, so I couldn't sign, and we're just doing it tomorrow." It's super easy as an insurance agent and just update the effective date for sure. So that's something where maybe as a loan officer or an insurance agent, we can advise, hey, let's get this through, let's get this sent in, let's get this
Hmm.
accepted, and then we can change it and update it whenever we need that to be. And that way, you're kind of sitting in the driver's seat as a consumer for sure.
Yeah, take control of it and prevent problems before they become problems. So
Exactly right. Exactly.
I am all about an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. So
Exactly right. Exactly. And is that
awesome.
something for, I mean, going for you, is that something where, if closing happens and there is like a big storm where maybe insurance increases? I'm not saying it would. Is that something that like you have to redo a whole structure or I guess
Can
just more
be,
along?
yeah. I mean, depending on the situation, like let's say there's a dramatic increase in the premium that we're aware of before the loan closes that impacts DTI. Yeah, I mean, if it's a material change in the file, we have to account for that. We'll also, to your point, have moratoriums in some cases where, let's say you're buying a house in an area being impacted by a storm. I mean,
Mhm.
the mortgage, what a mortgage is, it's a loan secured by a collateral, and the collateral is the house. So there may be a moratorium on closings where we won't fund the loan until after the storm has passed and we can verify the house is still in good condition because ultimately that house is collateral for our loan.
Exactly.
So yeah,
Exactly.
it can cause more problems than just insurance. I was curious how it worked on the insurance side, but it sounds like it's very, very similar. So
Yeah. Yeah. Very similar. It's funny.
yeah, but yeah, hurricanes in general can cause problems. I know that a lot of the insurance issues we're seeing right now in the last year or two in the Gulf Coast and in the Atlantic Coast in Charleston are due to some of the hurricanes and the storms and the
Exactly.
fallout from those and what Florida has been through for the past couple of years is finally catching up to us. So
Exactly, and it's just an unfortunate that it's taking place and happened and kind of caused an increase in overall insurance in general.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you see any relief from that coming anytime soon, or are the changes that are occurring pretty much here to stay?
I'm hoping so. My fingers crossed. I would love it if my job was a lot easier.
Yeah,
I have a lot more options for people. That would make my job a whole lot easier. But yes, I do believe so. I think if I had to kind of describe it, I feel like same way with rates kind of expecting to drop and get a
hmm,
little bit easier. Insurance is going to follow a few months after that,
gotcha.
where kind of the same time, similar, where mortgage rates were kind of increasing this kind of happened with the insurance rates as well. And so that way, kind of like what we were talking about, if you're going through a refi, I think that's an amazing time to also take another look at your insurance. If you're already trying to save money on your monthly mortgage payment, might as well try the overall
All the way.
estimate, go all the
Yeah,
way and try the insurance as well. And so that's where, hopefully that's in between the first time that you wrote that policy and the last time maybe something did happen where you got a roof increase or plumbing or anything that you haven't even talked to your insurance agent about for sure.
yep, yep. I actually have a client I'm working with right now that will be hopefully knocking out a refi to save him, hoping 700-800 bucks a month. But he's done a ton of work to his house. That's a good time to reevaluate his insurance too, because he's
Exactly.
upgraded the plumbing, he's upgraded the floors, paint, new roof, so
Hmm.
save some money all the way around. So
And and it's a good chunk of change too. When if you're investing that much into it, it's not just $10 or $5. There's been cases for me. I had a yesterday actually saved the girl $1,000 on the overall year, and it was just because of a couple different discounts that for talking with an agent versus doing it, she did it online. And it's just like, oh, we can add this in here, we can add this in here. Have you thought about adding this coverage? And we saved her $1,000 overall in total, which is for me at least a good chunk of change.
Yeah, absolutely. That's $80, $90 a month. So that's a huge
Exactly.
difference.
Exactly.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate your time today. It's been super informative.
No,
We'll have to link up again pretty soon to discuss flood insurance because
right.
I have a whole slew of questions about flood insurance.
I'm
That's a
more than happy.
Charleston thing. It's a Louisiana thing, and vast majority of properties have to have it these days. So we need to catch up on flood insurance pretty soon. So
For sure. No, I'm more than happy to help. But thank you for having me on, and thank you for your time. I know it's very valuable, so thank you. I appreciate it.
absolutely, same to you, man. Appreciate your
All
time today.
right.
Talk to you soon.